Welcome to the NEREJ NYREJ podcast. I'm your host, Rick Kaplan, and my guest today is Stephanie Cronin, the Executive Director of the Middlesex 3 Coalition. Hello,
Hey, Rick.
Stephanie.
Thanks for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, it's always a pleasure to have you on our podcast or even our events that we put together, which we've been doing. How many years have we been putting together events?
Long time. 7, 8, 9. I don't know. I can't get
I think it's more like it's either 5 or 6
okay.
years.
I don't know what you're
It
asking
might
me
seem
there.
like 7 or 8, but it's 5 or 6.
Time's going by.
But we've been putting them on, and they've been always well attended, and people get a lot of information from them. You agree?
I do. And they even during COVID, I think we did a nice job with them when we had to do them virtually. They worked out well, but obviously in person, there's nothing like being in person. So we had our last in-person one last year in Burlington, and we had a good turnout, and it was all focused on housing, and that certainly is the hot topic. I'm sure you're seeing that as well too, as everybody.
Yeah, a lot of people they want to get back into the in-person events. I know everyone's still got the COVID thing hanging over our heads, but you know what? I think everyone's starting to feel we got to start going forward, and it's just a way of life.
Yeah, we have been for a while too, especially real estate folks. We do things with virtual things with in other areas, but with real estate, you need to talk with people. You need to be in person and make those connections, and that's how deals get done.
Yeah, everything is connections. That's what we talk about, that's what we do is we make connections, and without the in-person networking, the connections, it loses a little in the translation.
Well, you know what I like about our events too, and I mean the panels are great, the discussion's great, but it's nice to look out and to see there's always people in the back of the room that deals are getting done before, during, and after. It's happening. So that's really what I like to see, is connecting people, and then hearing that so and so ended up in this building because they met at one of our events, and those types of things.
Yeah, I'll never forget a deal that was made because of our event. There was a gentleman that was an hotel owner, and he was looking to build a hotel in a certain area. I don't remember where it was. I do remember it was for northern New England, and he was talking with a developer at one of our events, and they made the connection, and they both worked on this hotel, and ta-da, it's done.
See, I didn't know about that either. There are a couple of other ones that come to my mind, and I see different people from whether it's the state or the municipalities or other real estate owners, and I hear from them after a few months or years or whatever. But it'd be nice to try to capture what actually happens at these events too.
Yeah, it would be. And we do well. I shouldn't say we, because it's mostly you bring in a lot of the our government people to our panels.
We work together.
Yeah, we work together, but you have a lot of good connections in the like the mass development and the
MOBD, of course.
Yeah. So I mean, those people that come to our events get to meet some of these people, and this year might be even more important because hopefully we get to bring in some of the newer people that are coming into the administration. And our event this year is going to be in August, I think.
Usually in August.
Yeah.
Usually like the first week in August. Yeah, I mean, I think we've gone through, we've had these longer than 5 years, I think, because I think we've had like 3 different secretaries of economic development speak at our different events. I don't know. My kids say I don't have a very good memory, so maybe.
Well, in reality, I think we had more, because we had some that were actually out of office that we had come on our panels. So
we had one where we had all 3 of them, like two former and the current one as well
Yeah.
too. But,
So, yeah,
yeah.
no, they're great connections and also great information that they provide. So, I encourage everyone to attend all of NEREJ events and all of Middlesex 3 Coalition events, which are always posted and people can find out that information.
And going back to what you were saying earlier, I mean, we are convener. That's really what we do, is we bring people together to try to address some of those larger business development concerns. We bring the public and the private sector together and work on issues such as transportation. That was the biggest issue. I think it's become a huge issue again. Workforce development, and also big issue, transportation, housing, infrastructure, and just really focus on some of those issues and try to bring some of these larger companies to the table and to hear from them as well too. And one thing that we have done is we've started, we're calling a legislative leadership series, where we look at different topics that are important to business development, to our business community, and whether it's any of those, and we really focus on it. We see what the state or the federal government or municipalities will be doing over the next months or years to try to move the needle on some of those topics as well too.
So that gives us a little bit of a background on what the Middlesex 3 Coalition is all about, because a lot of people that might be listening to this right now are, when it's on its podcast stations, but they might not be familiar with Middlesex 3 Coalition.
So
let me just specify that this is an organization that we're not going to see a lot of them throughout the state. There's not a bunch of Middlesex 3s.
There's just one, but there are a number of, we call them REDOs, Regional Economic Development Organizations. And what we do is, like I said, we bring our public and the private sector together, right? We don't work with, but I mean, we do help some of the smaller mom and pop companies, the innovative smaller companies, but it's really those larger high-tech companies, the Miters and Millicors and Maycoms and iRobots and the Unity Serranos and the life sciences, the defense companies. It's the larger companies that we work with to try to address some of those bigger business development concerns, because we're not a chamber, and we don't want to take the place of the chamber. The chamber, they do a great job with a lot of their networking and the work that they do, but we really work to try to move the needle on some of those bigger policy issues.
So as far as a developer or a new company interested in opening or building a project in the Middlesex region,
Mm-hmm.
I would feel that it would be important for them to be part of the Middlesex 3, because that's a big help for them. Agreed?
Yes, and thank you for
of
the
course
public.
you
I appreciate it. We are a membership-based organization. And if you look on our website on Middlesex 3, you'd see our members, and there's a lot of real estate stakeholders, whether they're owners or brokers or developers or engineers or architects. A lot of our members, I think, are work very closely with you as well too, right?
right.
And so what we can offer them too is certainly contacts, and I think we talked about this earlier too, is connections to the municipalities, and that's part of what we try to do. Is it's a fine line, but it's not necessarily networking, it's more building relationships, so that when you have a deal in Burlington, Lexington, Bedford, I'll kind of go through some of my communities. Billerica, Chelmsford, Lowell, Tingsboro, Tewksbury, Westford. Got it. That the people there, the town managers, the economic developers, and if you don't, I can certainly introduce you to them. But the idea is you build those relationships so that when you have a deal, it's easy to call them up and say, hey, I'm looking to do X, Y, Z, and you can have honest conversation about what needs to be done and what the process is and who you need to talk with. And then we have, we have events and 2 or 3 a month, where we focus on different issues, whether they're real estate issues or what's going on with distribution or life sciences or whatever it is, where we bring our real estate folks together and our educational folks and businesses. And it's always a hodgepodge of people who come to our meetings, which is healthy, I think, because then you're meeting different people than just the same folks.
Yeah, and it's more intimate, those meetings, those network meetings that you put together.
I say it's a little hokey, but I think it's true in that, you see your old friends and you make new friends, and it's a little silly, but I do think that there's value in it, and it really is just good people getting together and trying to improve development in the region. And
It's a tremendous value. I mean,
yeah,
I was talking to someone the other day, and we were talking about how they were getting a project done because they have a good relationship with someone and this was in New Hampshire, someone in the New Hampshire government.
nice.
And they helped along with the permitting process because they had that connection, so they knew who this developer was, but it's all about connections. It also makes the process a lot easier when people know you, instead of getting the runaround, because this one, oh, I don't know you, go, fill out this paperwork,
Right.
It's like
Honestly, it's just more enjoyable to work with people that that you like as
right.
well.
They have no problem guiding you through the process.
Yeah.
It's
And we
not like,
work a lot with New Hampshire too, because we're right on the border. And I will say Nashua's done a nice job doing, really focusing on bringing more housing into Nashua, which that really helps Massachusetts companies as well too. I mean, we know you see the traffic coming from New Hampshire down to Massachusetts. And
well, especially after the pandemic, because we've had a lot of people move over that border.
Right.
Even people that worked in the Boston area.
That's true.
They
Moving
moved
out
over
more to the suburbs.
they moved over the New Hampshire border because the land that was available, and they could build a bigger home instead of an apartment or a condo from the city. But we see it went all the way up to Maine.
Right. Well, it'll be interesting, and certainly, we talked about it at our last meeting about housing and the future of housing and the MBTA communities, and housing choice. But we're not done talking about housing. There's just so much to talk about, and it's still just such a major issue. And we're doing some work. We work very closely with our planning agencies and municipalities, of course, and the real estate folks on how to encourage more housing in our area as well too, and how to create housing that works for both the developers and the municipalities. And what can the municipalities do to encourage, whether it's housing, yes, but also other areas too. Like Burlington, they've been getting more life science companies in. And it's not just because they said they want more life science companies. They really took a hard look at it. And Kristen Kasner, I give her a lot of credit. They changed the zoning in Burlington. And it wasn't just Kristen, but anyway, they changed the zoning in Burlington to encourage more life science companies as well too. And can we be doing that, or we certainly need to be doing that more for housing as well too? So what works so that it works for the municipalities and for the companies?
Well, I have to say the Middlesex area has drawn a lot more life science companies than any other suburb area of Massachusetts.
Well, just to pick up on that, if you look at Mass Bio's, what's it called? Ready Mass? No. Mass Bio, they have a list of life science companies, and they have a rating of which communities are ready for life science companies. And there's a platinum, gold, silver, bronze awards based upon what the communities have done to encourage more life science companies. And if you go on MassBio and you look at their map, there's a big dark area in the Middlesex 3 area, because all of our communities, majority of our communities, are platinum communities. So they've done the most to encourage more life science companies. And it is it's impressive to see that there are so many in our area. Yeah.
But they also, I think that because they were focusing on the transportation and the housing, because those are two issues that a lot of them struggle with when they're trying to find locations outside of the Boston market, Boston, Cambridge market.
So thank you for that, because that's really something that Middlesex 3 worked with when we were created in 2012. And every year, one thing I love about our organization is every year we grow a little bit, we expand, whether it's expand with new municipalities, whether it's our focus will grow. It's just, I feel as though you have to, otherwise it gets boring, and I don't want to be boring. But one thing that we did do in 2014, because we heard so much from the business community of how transportation, it was difficult to get workers from Boston and Cambridge up to the Burlington, Bedford, the Middlesex 3 area, Billerica area. We created a transportation management association. And so this TMA, and there are, I don't know, 16, there are a bunch of them in the state. And so we put shuttles on the road in order to get employees from the Boston, Cambridge area up to the Middlesex 3 area. And we continue to grow that as well too. COVID set us back, but we still have the shuttles going. And we still have funding to increase the number of shuttles that we have on the road as well too. So that's one of many areas that we're trying to encourage more municipalities, companies to embrace in order to get more employees from the Boston, Cambridge area.
Well, we know it works. So,
It does, yeah.
So the proof, they have the proof.
Right. Well, and the other thing that we see too is that so many companies are interested in being more sustainable. And part of it is it's the right thing to do. But part of it is also that's what their employees are requesting, demanding.
Well, it starts out as a request and then it becomes demanding.
One or the other, whichever way you want to look at it. But yeah, so that's one way companies can be more sustainable is by being part of the TMA, encouraging more carpools as part of it, doing it, just changing the mindset, getting people to think more about alternative ways to get to work. I mean, we do stuff with biking too, which I always think biking's not going to do anything to change transportation in this area. But what it does do is it gets people to think about, you don't have to just jump into a car to get to work. I get one guy who goes from Beverly to Bedford on bike. Makes you feel a little lazy, huh?
That's a little right.
Yeah, except
the first thing in the morning to go to work.
And then he goes to work. But when the weather's bad, he only goes halfway, and then he drives the rest of the way. I don't know. So
and he carries the bike.
Yeah, right. Yeah, runs with the bike. But yeah. So the TMA is really. I'm hoping over the next year that we're going to be growing it, and just if nothing else, it gets cars off the road. But it is better for the environment. It's a way to get more.
It's funny because we were talking about that the other day in my office, which I don't go in there that often, but we were talking about the transportation because the electricity is doubled.
Yeah.
And gas is going to be going up again. And they're trying to encourage people to buy electric cars. The electric cars, they're giving incentives to buy, but only if they're made in America.
Right. Right.
So a lot of these things that it's you have to be able to navigate through all the right things to do and all. And is it really saving? my thought is everyone's going to start going back to horse and buggies. That's
It'd be an awful mess. Yeah, no, that's true. That's true. So I used to work at MOBD, the Mass Office of Business Development. And part of what I'd say there is that there are so many programs that are out there to help businesses to expand. But businesses really, they're focused on keeping their business going, that they don't have time to look into all these programs. And so that's part of what we do try to do at Middlesex 3 is to help the companies or developers to introduce them to, whether it's the colleges, whether it's mass hire, the municipalities, whoever it is, to help them to get the grants that they might need, or to get the workforce that they need, or the utility companies. We've had a number of people have asked us to help give them some help to kind of move their project through. I mean, that's a big one as well too. So there's one thing, and I do offer to my members is if you have companies who are looking at a building, and I can be the cheerleader to let them know, what this community has, I'd be happy to do that and just introduce them to people in the area. Yeah.
Well, I would say most of the municipalities in the Middlesex area are all members or
Oh yeah,
on the board
they are.
of the Middlesex area. So, I mean, that makes it a little easier for you to help some company or a developer to navigate through the system because you have access to them all the time.
Well, it's kind of interesting too, is that when we started in 2012, I think it was really, Lexington and Lowell were the only two communities that had economic developers. And now all the communities do. All the municipalities have an economic development director or something along those lines. And and I think that that's such an important role to help these businesses, so that you have a single point of contact in Chelmsford or Bedford, Billerica, wherever, so that you can pick up the phone and talk with that person and find out what the resources are as well too. So we work very closely with them. In fact, one thing we do is we'll have meetings with just our municipalities, our economic developers, and just have them talk with each other. And the idea is the real estate folks, they know the difference between working in Bedford versus Billerica, will say, I don't know, whatever. That if they know how they're different, our municipalities should know how they're different as well too. And they should learn from each other and make certain that we have the best practices for the region. And so we do this. So we just did an event today. We do them throughout the year. It's called What's Happening in Chelmsford. And it's a way to open up the doors and let people know economic development deals that are happening in Chelmsford, and some of the businesses that are going on, that are happening, and some of the deals that are taking place. And one thing I love is I love it when other municipalities will go to these, and they've created really good relationships among the municipalities. So that, for example, one of our communities was trying to get a drive-through approved at town meeting for their restaurants. And so we're able to connect them with all of our other municipalities who've recently done drive-throughs at town meeting, so that they could learn from the other ones of how to do it, what to include, what not to include, how to reach out to your residents, and So it's really just breaking down those silos. And
see, that's all that information is so important. And if you are part of a municipality, I would think you would want to have something like this, because it makes your life a lot easier, because this town already worked on drive-throughs. They know what the issues were. They know what problems they had to resolve. And now they can help someone that is going through that same issue.
Right.
Right. And it's like anything, you learn from people that made the mistakes,
Right. Well, and it was so important during COVID too, because we were all learning at the same time. And how, there were just so many so many things going on. So there was the outdoor dining. I think there was a lot of discussion about that. There's a lot of outdoor art as well too that a lot of the municipalities are embracing. But you know, even just what is the future? And one of our events is we do a series on the real estate leadership. And so we'll look at different areas, and you know, we've looked at restaurants and retail and life sciences, of course. But with, you know, restaurants, we were talking about what's the future of restaurants, and this was during COVID. And but we talked a lot about walk-up windows, not just drive-through, but walk-up windows as well. But also, you know, changing the menus for drive-throughs, so you don't have the whole menu to choose from. It's a pared down menu in order to keep the traffic moving, and so you don't have the backup on the roads as well too. So the idea with really all of our meetings is, you know, in the meetings we do all the time, right? I think you're the one who always says that you're not going to learn everything about whatever it is. You're just going to learn enough, and you're going to meet somebody so that you can pick up the phone and you can talk with them,
Right.
and then you
So
can
you can
build
get
up
the
relationship.
you can get the bits and pieces, and then when you really need all the information, you know where
No,
to
we don't
go.
want to get into the weeds, right? Nobody
Right.
wants that. But you know, give them just a little bit so that we can create those relationships. And
But
get
that's
some
what makes the Middlesex Three such a great area to bring life science and bring different corporations to it, because of that reason. You are bringing all these communities into one place, you know, so you know they can work out these details. It's not like a competition out there, you know.
right.
And for years,
Friendly competition. There's some
yeah,
friendly competition going
yeah,
on.
but a lot of them were like that. A lot of cities and towns were like that. They were trying to compete with the town next to them.
Right, right,
And so they didn't want anyone in that town knowing what they were doing in the government, you know. So instead of working together to make the whole area good, you know, work for good, they were
right.
kind of separating themselves. So
Yeah, you're right, and honestly, it's just more fun that way as well too. But yeah, that is a lot what we're trying to do, and we do have these target industries that you know we've targeted because they're growing industries, and defense, life sciences, IT, healthcare, and advanced manufacturing. Probably no surprise. I think those are pretty common because they are the areas in Massachusetts that are growing, but especially in the Middlesex 3 area. And part of what we're doing is trying to highlight them and to show what we currently have, because companies want to locate in good neighborhoods, right? Where they can look around, they know that there are other similar companies that are already there because they know the workforce is there, right? And so one thing we're doing is bringing these companies together and having roundtables. We've done them. I think one of our last ones was with Congressman Moulton at Northeastern in Burlington with our defense companies, and just to hear what are their concerns. And I thought it would all be on workforce, but it really wasn't. It was just a whole gamut of everything, honestly. But it was interesting to hear from the defense companies and hear where we are with various bills that will impact them as well too.
yeah, and you know, I love to see the way the Middlesex 3 operates. I love to see that through all of Massachusetts, you know, and maybe you could be like the the showcase for that.
You know, you're great for the ego, though, Rick. I gotta say.
Well, I love the Middlesex 3, and you've done a great job, Stephanie.
Thank you.
And you know, because they get things done. You know, it's almost like you know, instead of having all that bureaucracy, I can't say it, bureaucracy,
Yeah, yeah.
you know, where you have to go through all this, the paperwork and all that, and you have to meet so many people before you get to the bottom line of what you really need to do.
Yeah.
Everything is already streamlined because Middlesex 3 has worked on this and have worked with all the different communities. And I like that idea.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And we have talked with a number of other organizations, and we do work closely with other organizations around the state that we're all slightly different as well. But I do like the idea of just bringing people together and seeing what happens. And
And
you want to keep it.
obviously, the cities and towns in the Middlesex region, they also believe that, because they're willing to come in and join in.
Right,
You
right.
know?
They are our partners, and we've established that from the beginning. In fact, it was the municipalities that started the coalition. And so the idea was, we want to be working together because it's, yeah, it's better for the region. And I think we use, whatever company it is that's come to the area, whether MITRE, I think it was Keurig at that point. We looked at, everyone was looking to get Keurig to come into the region, and well, they're located in Burlington, which is great for Burlington taxes, but employees come from everywhere. And so it really does help the whole region as well, too.
And now they can all get coffee right away.
Right away. That's right. With Dr. Pepper right now. But yeah. So and part of the reason we started was our area is in the middle of a couple of different, or we border a couple of different regions. Like we've got 3 mass hires in our region. We've got 2 RTAs. We've got 2 planning agencies. So I guess pros and cons to that. So part of what we do is we try to bring them all together so that we can get the resources that we need as well too.
Well, that's what happens once you start building on everything. Then everyone wants to start to jump on the bandwagon.
Sure. And
it
it's
makes
all
it
fun.
easier. It makes it easier for you to get those people to want it.
Absolutely. And again, we try to have fun along the way too. And we work with good people, and it's all, it's part of what we're trying to do. Yeah, I think what we're talking about now.
It's great. It's all great. I love it. And, and I think you do a great job, Stephanie, and the Middlesex 3. The whole organization I'm a big fan, which I'm sure you know.
We work very well together, and it's always, I always enjoy, I look forward to our meeting. It's one of our larger ones as well, too. And, I'm hoping that this year we're going to get to our pre-COVID levels. I know it hasn't been bad, right?
No.
It really, it's getting close.
Yeah, I think you have more and more people that are just, COVID's here, and that's it.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had so many vaccinations, I don't even know. I lost count on how many.
We have to live with it, so we just be careful. And
that's all. It's part of life now.
Right. But
Stephanie,
no, it's all good stuff.
Stephanie, I appreciate it. I always love seeing you. And I'm glad you came on the show today.
Well, thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure, and I'm a big fan as well too. And you do great work, and I love how you guys have continued to change as well too, and try different formats. And I love seeing the things that you guys are doing and bringing new content. So thank you for all your work.
Well, thank you, Stephanie. Middlesex 3 Coalition's been a great partner of the New England Real Estate Journal, and hopefully that will continue for many, many years down the road. I don't know if I'll still be around.
9 or whatever, how many years we've already said.
And we're talking with Stephanie Cronin. She's the Executive Director of the Middlesex 3 Coalition. And I'm Rick Kaplan, and I think this deal's done.